Life in the greater Serengeti Mara ecosystem of Kenya and Tanzania is increasingly challenging for humans and wildlife. To promote health and well-being in this complex and iconic ecosystem, an African-European scientific project called African Bioservices has been formed through funding from the European Union. African Bioservices studies the linkages between 6 factors. First, human population growth. Second, land use change. Third, climate change. Fourth, ecosystem services. Fifth, biodiversity. And last but not least, human well-being. The aims and achievements of African Bioservices has been to 1. Collect existing data on the ecosystem. 2. Conduct fieldwork to fill gaps. And 3. Analyze data and develop mechanistic and predictive models in service of sustainable development. In achieving these aims, a total of 65 graduate degrees were awarded, and more than half of those were to students from African countries. In addition to providing scientific recommendations for conservation, the project is an example of innovation through collaboration. Of interdisciplinary scientists from 7 African research institutions and 6 European institutions working together for the sustainable health of the greater Serengeti Mara ecosystem and its inhabitants. This short film, comprised of interviews with African Bioservices researchers, is an effort to document and support interdisciplinary and international collaboration through science. It emerged from the question, how would you advise future conservation scientists to approach interdisciplinary research with collaborators from diverse backgrounds? The overarching message is that tolerant scientists produce better science, and that central to tolerance is an understanding of communication, context, and cooperation. By remaining mindful of the 3 C's, communication, context, and cooperation, conservation research can maximize its scientific and social contributions.
If the students have been selected to join the university, there are a lot of things that they need to learn, and most of the time we get students who are not naive. They have some knowledge behind what they want to study.
Of course you train them in the things that come automatically of being a researcher in a multidisciplinary project, which is be interested in each other's disciplines, broaden your view, listen to each other, try to learn from each other. But my first lesson is a different one. My first lesson is work on your technical skills.
Yeah, as is usual, I think in research design, and given my background as a statistician, we always recommend that they consult with a statistician first. So determine things like sample size, the appropriate layout of the design in the field, and things like this. But over and above the statistics, I think it is important when you're going to do a study to really visit, if it's possible, the study site, so you are familiar with the area itself, to know where you're going to really do the study. So like take the case of Serengeti Mara. It's a very large area, so you have to decide like where in this system am I going to do the study, because normally you will have limited resources.
Like for instance with the mammal and animal cones, we had originally agreed that they should also do those cones in the same size as they did the enclosure work with the plants and with others were doing other kind of work, so we had the same kind of design and same kind of places where they did
In
it.
the first place, I would like to say to point out that working with international community or partners from elsewhere is very, very important in terms of sharing the knowledge, sharing the skills. It offers opportunity for youngsters to learn from their colleagues, their partners in developed countries, because they have more equipment. For example, even myself, for the first time I saw the data loggers in the field. I had not yet got an opportunity to see the data loggers. And therefore, when you work with partners from abroad, then you come across equipment that you have not used before. You will come across techniques that you have not used before, and therefore, you grow much faster.
Well, I think it's been a huge learning experience, working with people that are doing something radically different. For instance, I didn't do spatial economics before, and a lot of the focus of the ecologist on the program is specifically spatial issues. So I think I've learned a lot from having to deal with that. And also simply picking up on the econometric aspect of that.
Well, the traveling, it was long. I had to walk several kilometers in a day. It has never happened in my life. Yes, the worst village was the Piaya village. Wow. Well, it was far, huge, big, and we had to cover that up in 2 to 3 days. Very extreme.
Definitely lots of benefits. First of all, you get a chance to work with people. Some of them very bright people actually in their own fields, and people who are really experienced. And this allows you to go beyond what you could achieve on your own. So for example, we've had opportunity to work on collaborative papers, for example, that we would not have been able to do on our own, because we were able as a team to look at different aspects of the problem.
For instance, when starting, I think it will be very necessary to bring all the professionals or the personnel that you'll be working with on a particular area of study on board, so that we get to know each other, we get to know what role should one be playing, what data is expected from who, what kind of data do we need to acquire, what kind of data is already available. And then after getting, that should be at the very initial stage, before even we start thinking on how to move forward. Then after getting this cohesion, you see now moving forward will be a bit easy, because you will have already developed a work plan, you will have already known who is going to do what, will already have known who is going to coordinate everything, so that in case of any hitch or in case of any obstacle, then you know the person to approach, because the coordinator is there, and the coordinator is knowing the roles of each and every individual, the roles of each and every institution.
The issue about interdisciplinary, the real challenge is to break away from interdisciplinary, which is people working alongside each other from different disciplines, to transdisciplinary, which is people focusing on the same objective from different perspectives. And that's a distinction that's been debated at my university, because it's very seldom achieved at the full transdisciplinary level. But that's the need currently.
The distribution of the research findings, I can say, it would not be also just a single individual's decision, as it is interdisciplinary and probably international. So there must be a common understanding that how far we're going to do. For example, there are open journal access, I can say, if you want to circulate through. So there must be just as I have said, a common understanding how are we going to do. It is just saying, okay, I'm just going to put in this journal, only this one, or I'm just going to use just this way, not that one. As it is interdisciplinary, it would need a common understanding on how to circulate and to share those information, as it involves different disciplines as well.
Well, I think having not having too high expectations might be one thing that's required. On the other hand, it's good to be ambitious and try to do the best that you possibly can with the skills and the data that you have. But at some point, you need to narrow it down to something where you can realistically have your results disseminated. And it's not always necessarily so that the highest impact journal is the best outlet. I mean, sometimes it's you get a bigger impact by interacting with people through other sources, other media, than necessarily the peer-reviewed international journals.
Yeah, again, I think that is very interesting. One of the things that we are kind of struggling with here is for instance, internet connectivity. We always have issues with internet, and sometimes we have issues with power, and sometimes we can't access some of the the articles that are published in various journals because our library is not subscribing to these journals, and so access to scholarly works sometimes becomes a big challenge. Now, when you work in a multidisciplinary team, it becomes a little bit easy to get those articles. You can send a request to a friend who is in Europe or in the US. Okay, I want this article. I think this is going to be very useful in the the paper that I'm writing, and so I don't have the access. So he can easily pull up the paper and send it to you, so you can read, and that can really enrich you.
Who will be disseminating? Dissemination is also a skill. It's something that someone has to learn. Someone is having that skill.
Most of these findings are having a lot of complicated statistics, which is well understood by other scientists, but we have to look the impacts. We also want to touch policymakers and also local communities. So we should find a way that we can narrow down this kind of information in a summary way that other people also can understand, not with all those complicated models and statistics.
Dissemination is where many researchers have not done very well, because the thinking of researchers is to get good results, write a paper, submit in a high impact journal, and then they are happy. But at the end of the day, it doesn't help to address the problem in the communities, because they are the ones who are suffering. So I think it is high time for researchers to change our mindset, to make sure that we give back feedback.
Okay, maybe I will start from the local level. From what I have learned, because I spent a lot of time with local communities. If we continue the way we do now, I think to reach a time when we go to communities and they say, no, we are not going to give you any information unless you bring us some results. What other researchers have done.
We're also a bit careful of really saying, well, these are the societal solutions that should be chosen, because for that there's a democratic process, there's governments, there's districts, there's democratic representation of people. So it's really up to the regions what the best solutions are, and they can have regional differences in solutions. But this is what we try to disseminate. This is what we found. This is the problems that need solutions, and these are possible directions to think of. And then it's up to decision makers and politicians to make the final decisions where to go.
So let us try hard to go to issues that solve problems of communities.
Fantastic. The African Bioservices Project closed in 2019. However, the researchers strive to remain connected as a dynamic network. While they don't always agree on the interpretation of data, There is a general agreement that their field site is a social context that requires communication, cooperation, and an understanding of context. Through this reflection, the research takes on new and additional meanings.